one thing I always mention about the Ideal Bartender is, as a cocktail book, it kind of bookended the last golden era of cocktails. Uh you had Professor Jerry Thomas's bartender manual, and then you had the Ideal Bartender book ending it.
Mm.
And it was something that wasn't spoken about, or the book wasn't seen for many years, because it was literally during the start of Prohibition. So it died. And then it was also a celebration of an African American bartender, which was when we were growing up as bartenders back in the day. We didn't hear of him until much later in our career.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Decoding Cocktails podcast. I'm your host, Chris LeBeau. At the ripe age of 38, I left my former career behind and joined the hospitality industry. Since then, I've been on a rapid journey of learning, meeting all sorts of great people, and this podcast is my chance to bring you along with me, whether I'm interviewing somebody that works in the industry, another enthusiast, or occasionally stepping back to share what I'm working on or my thoughts. I'm so glad you're here, and so with that aside, let's get into today's episode. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of the Decoding Cocktails podcast. My guest today is someone who, in my limited experience, seems to exude nothing but love, generosity, and hard work, and yet is a complete force in the industry. This is Colin Asare-Appiah. The title he carries by day is the Director of Multicultural and LGBTQ Advocacy at Bacardi, where he has worked for many years. Coincidentally, part of my cocktail origin story involves something that Colin helped create. In 2010, as I was just getting into things, I went to a local iteration here in St. Louis of something called the Lab, which actually stands for the London Academy of Bartenders. This was actually originally created by Colin and a few others in 1996. And over the course of his long career, the man has taken home so many accolades and has so many things in his bag. But I think last year, an award he took home kind of summarizes it when at Tales of the Cocktail, he was awarded the Visionary Award. The thing that brought us together is something he launched in 2024 called AJABU, which is a Swahili word that translates to words like amazing, miraculous, and marvelous. As Colin and his co-founder, Mark Talbot Holmes, have written, our vision is to act as a platform for the African hospitality industry to connect across the continent and beyond to inspire innovation, collaboration, and creativity, as well as to celebrate Africa and its incredible diversity of people, ingredients, and drinks. And even before AJABU at Tales, as I was kind of getting started, I would go to these seminars that Colin would help convene. One was called Africa Is Now, where he was bringing together people making great drinks on the continent. Included in the original post for this will be a promo video filmed after the first iteration of AJABU in 2024. And if you can watch that video and still not want to go, well, I mean, there's something wrong with you. I'd be remiss and probably even guilty of something if I didn't iterate Colin's catchphrase, which is get involved, bruv. Colin is always inviting us to become people of action. He is charming and infectious. You can find more about the AJABU Festival at ajabufestival.com, that is AJABU, or on Instagram at AJABU Festival. And since you almost certainly cannot run fast enough to keep up with Colin, you can find him online on Instagram at Cocktail Colin. Enjoy this conversation. So Colin, as I was preparing for this interview, I thought about another time when I kind of, again, this podcast I think is an interesting bit of art and science. And I thought about a moment when I accidentally attempted to turn the country of Ireland into a bit of a soundbite, and which no place is, right? And so I just wanted, for those people listening who haven't spent enough time thinking about the continent, I wanted to, kind of talk about first, just a couple, set the stage. When you think about Africa, but the first thing you know is that it's about 4 times the size of the continental U.S. According at least to Boston University, there are 3,000 languages spoken there. Regardless of the exact number, and it's home to many of the world's fastest growing economies. And I think all that to say, when we are talking about parts of the continent today, we need to not think of it as a place, but as, just an uncountable number of places, and that's going to bring with it all sorts of beautiful cultural nuance and whatnot. So there were just moments when I'm interested as we get into things today to hear thoughts about what you are seeing, but realize that that doesn't mean we should intuit that as that's what's happening everywhere, because it could look all sorts of different ways in various places. So, you know, again, digging in with the research here, it's apparent, and even just from the handful of times I've met you, you always seem to be just about everywhere and doing everything. So with a guy that already has all of this much on his plate, there's obviously your, you know, African Ghanaian, heritage, but like, what is it that was like inspired you to be like, you know what I need? I need one more thing on my plate.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for what you just said as well, folks have said, wow, Colin, you're omnipresent. You seem to be everywhere all at the same time. And that's because I try and live my mantra, which is get involved, bruv. And it's not just a phrase, it's also definitely a lifestyle and a call to action. But with that being said, as you're talking about a continent, I just couldn't stop thinking about the fact that you're right, it's 4 times larger than continental US. You could fit Europe, India, China, America into it and still have space. And it's pretty incredible, right? When you just think of those land masses and those people. But then it's 54 different countries as well, which if you think of if you just imagine the US being 54 different countries, 54 different languages, cultures, and it's kind of mind-boggling. And it changes where you go from region to region across countries, region to region across the continent as well. And it's just a very vast tapestry of people and cultures that I love the opportunity to embrace with and to come in contact with. Being a proud Ghanaian and being a proud African. I was born in Ghana. I left when I was 7, moved to London. I've always had an appreciation of what the continent has to offer. I was lucky enough to work with a dear friend, Douglas Ankara, who was one of the driving forces behind myself and Mark deciding that we were going to actually start the festival in South Africa. We were working together on a bar called The Lab. We started off as a training school, then it was the lab, and then we opened the lab in Cape Town actually in 2001. Couple of young guys, trying to do something different, trying to make an impact back then. But the interesting thing was we actually, or even Douglas, wasn't aware of the impact that and how that was going to shape our futures. And from Cape Town, he was inspired by Cape Town to create a global phenomenon of a cocktail called the Porn Star Martini, which was inspired by his visits to a place called Mavericks. So the PC name is actually Mavericks Martini, and for those who are feeling a little bit risque, the Porn Star Martini. And it's become a cultural revelation and a cultural revolution. And in the spirit of keeping Douglas's name as well alive, we wanted to pay tribute to him and start it in South Africa. Because the AJABU is a Pan-African cocktail festival, a Pan-African movement, and is a celebration of the culture, not just in South Africa, but across all of the continents.
Absolutely. You know, to the scale of the continent as well, as you began to think about bringing this to life, I know that in the original iteration, you are about, let's count it. Like, what are we, like 5 days out of like the most recent
Yep.
AJABU? Yeah, yeah. For anybody that doesn't know, Colin, his term wasn't jet lagged; it's jet fresh. Uh, but uh,
Yes.
but I think so what are you, I mean, in terms of like hot off the second one, are there, again, like you've been involved with Tails and all sorts of things for long times. What do you, having just come off the second one, what are your, I mean, I'm sure other than just amazement and hopefully a lot of that feel good that those of us who have been at least to Tales before are used to, is there anything you're coming away from the second one with in terms of what's already you see evolving over time with Ajabu at this point in time?
Yeah, of course. There's so many things. This is the first anniversary. It's the first year anniversary of AJABU, which is an amazing space and a place to be. The fact that we managed to make it for the first year was amazing. We've done a few iterations of it now because it's biannual. It's a biannual Pan-African cocktail festival, the first really of its kind. There are other cocktail festivals happening on the continent that have been around for a lot longer than Ajabu, but we decided to make it biannual so that we could focus on different things throughout the year, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But with that being said, with Ajabu, when we first started it, what we really wanted to do was ensure that we were building community and we were building a space where people could come and they could connect, they could collaborate, and they could create. And I see that happening in other cocktail festivals around the world. I obviously, as you said, I worked closely with Tales for many years, and it's something that I felt that the continent deserved, and the fact that we're able to do it and bring some of our key learnings and experiences that I've personally had and other people who we invite to come to Ajabu, they bring their experiences as well to AJABU. It accelerates the community a lot quicker. If you think about, was it 22 years ago, Tales started with maybe a handful of people having lunch. And now look at it. It's a behemoth of a cocktail festival, if not one of the biggest in the world. But then since then, it's spawned others, BCB, Athens Bar Show, Euro Bar Show, London Cocktail Week, and all of these great things. Now it's the turn and a time for Africa. It's the time for the continent to really get its shine. And one of the things that we've picked up and a focus of ours moving forward is going to be knitting the other cocktail festivals with Ajabu and providing them as well with a sounding board to be able to connect their platforms with the rest of the world as well. Anything that I can do, anything that Mark can do, anything that our movement of Ajabu can do, the better. This festival is not necessarily Mark and mine. This festival is for the community. It's something that we kept reiterating during the festival. And the key learning is that this is a Pan-African festival. We have as much to learn from the festival as being people who provide the content, as we as they teach us, and it's great. We've had some amazing speakers in the last iteration of Ajabu. We just had some amazing speakers talking about all manner of different parts of the industry. Steve Olson, of course, and Julio Bermejo speaking about agave spirits and the rise of agave spirits across the world. You're starting to see little chinks of it on the continent. What mark this space and watch this space. I think you'll see a lot of agave spirits being consumed on the continent and even maybe coming out of the continent. But they delivered some sessions and they learned a lot as well in their interactions with the bar community on the ground. And one of the beauties of Ajabu is that people come from other parts of Africa as well to take part, which is very important for us. And we're going to continue that. And something that we're going to do is expand more on that reach. And we're going to see how we can ensure that we invite people from other parts of Africa to take part through sponsorships and apprenticeships and all that kind of stuff. So more coming.
Yeah, and I guess I even think about whether it's in a smaller market like St. Louis, the home of when Tom Bullock published his the perfect is it perfect bar. I've got the book upstairs. What's
It's the ideal bartender.
Ideal Bartender? Thank you. Yeah, but I
Ideal.
think like whether it's someone like myself coming from St. Louis, decent, second tier city that's got it like coming to Tales and like learning from other people, I think as well. I remember Thinking in some of the press readings, I was the reminder that, yeah, you could be growing up in a smaller, less cosmopolitan part of Africa, and being able to come there to connect with other people is going to give you the chance to kind of learn more from people and whatnot. You're going to have, again, certain parts of the U.S. as well, where again, uh, cocktail culture may be a little bit more frowned upon, and so it's nice for you to be able to get out and be able to kind of catch up with people too in that regard and kind of learn in that way.
Yeah, and it's to your point, St. Louis is definitely a market. It gave us Tom Bullock, right? And one thing I always mention about the Ideal Bartender is as a cocktail book, it kind of bookended the last golden era of cocktails. Uh you had Professor Jerry Thomas's bartender manual, and then you had the Ideal Bartender bookending it.
Mm.
And it was something that wasn't spoken about, or the book wasn't seen for many years because it was literally during the start of Prohibition. So it died. And then it was also a celebration of an African American bartender, which was when we were growing up as bartenders back in the day, we didn't hear of him until much later in our career. And one of the reasons why we wanted to ensure that we did AJABU in Africa is to ensure that there's representation of the local communities. And it's definitely that there's a large representation of women that take part in AJABU, which is great to see because it really does reflect what's happening on the ground and the excitement that's happening on the ground. There's a lot of tourism that's coming into all across Africa, and people are really surprised when they turn up in Joburg and Cape Town and see how developed the cocktail cultures are, and they're learning from the local bar communities about their practices, what they do, how they use what they use to ensure that they provide first class hospitality.
On a one of the things I was thinking about, I'm always interested to like study the food industry as like kind of a precursor, I think, to like where the drinks business could be going. And so to that end, one of the things I'm always mused about is how for a long time, and in this country and all over the world for a long time, French cuisine was seen as like the pinnacle of things, right? And over time, many cultures have been like, oh, here's a way that I can produce what might be seen as like our humble cuisine of this country in a very dignified manner. So I was curious from either a service or hospitality standpoint. And again, like there's a lot going on, so no pressure here, but like I'm curious if like you've seen anything where you're like, this is a way that I can see that they're because again, a lot of times we start by imitating our forebears, and then we learn. I think it's the Miles Davis quote. Then I've after a while learned how to play, but play like myself. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if there are things you've seen that feel very distinctly. You've seen one of these places kind of begin to sound like themselves,
Yeah,
if you will.
yeah. I mean, let's just step back to the food piece because food is very important and something that was reflected on High of the Hog when we talk about food was the movement of food from Africa through Europe and through the slave trade to the US as well. One of the dishes that I always appreciate and everyone appreciates on the continent, as soon as they hear that you're from Ghana or Nigeria, they're like, jollof, which is a tomato-based rice dish, which is quite interesting because when you ask people about a famous tomato-based rice dish, they think of paella. Paella moved up from West Africa through the Moors, through with the Moors through into Spain, and then once seafood and sausages and everything else was added, it was changed and became a different dish.
Mm.
Now, with that, when it comes to cocktail culture, we're finding that there's a lot of ingredients that we are starting to use in cocktails in the continent that you're going to start seeing around the globe. We had Eric Van Beek, who owns the best bar in the world, from Handshake. He went to Ghana He came to South Africa and then he went on to Nairobi. But something that we do as part of our practice for AJABU and our foraging piece is we take people to a nursery. And Eric came and he went and he tried loads of some amazing ingredients like Aztec mint, olive bush, and some local, they call it fynbos, which are local plants and fauna, which are just indigenous to that area. And he was so inspired that he left and said, "Oh, I'm going to use some of these in some of my cocktails," which is exactly what we want. We just had Simone Caporelli. He came, he went and he tried some of the different fruits and herbs and spices that are just indigenous to that region, and he too was inspired. So hopefully with this exchange, you're going to see a lot more ingredients coming to bear in cocktail culture. One of the easiest ones, obviously, is sobolo, or as we all know it as hibiscus. That's a massive trend across all of Africa. And also things like ginger, your cinnamons, your nutmegs, and all of that. You're star anise, the different peppers that you see across the continent as well. All of that is starting to popularize cocktail culture. I've seen, for example, in Ethiopian culture, what is it? Is it berberry? That kind of pepper.
That
People
sounds right. I have to look it up. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm listening.
yeah. People are starting to use that in syrups. And yeah, there's starting to be slight influences on cocktail culture, and it will become more accelerated. If we look at music, for example, now you can't look away but to hear an an influence of Afro beats. You look at fashion, you'll see that there are influences of fashion. All the high-end fashion stores, Louis Vuitton, LVMH, they all like are really very focused on the African palette as the backdrop for what they are sharing with the world. So there's a lot of inspirations. There's even a new store that's just opened, a new designer that I absolutely love, Makosa, in Soho in New York, and he comes from South Africa. There's a ton of cultural movements that are happening, and that will affect the cocktail culture. For example, in Ghana, we had the Year of the Return in 2020, which is known as a global phenomenon. Everybody, I remember in 2020, just thinking to myself, why the hell is the whole world in Ghana? Now, the Ghanaian government said, anyone from the diaspora, you can all come back here and you get citizenship. Great, everyone went, and it was a massive celebration. Fast forward, everyone sees that, oh, we can go and travel around the continent. We can just buy a flight and treat it and normalize it like you would if you're going to Italy, if you're going to Spain, if you're going to Paris, you know? And that's what's starting to happen across the continent. People on a journey of discovery, and through cocktail culture, when they sit together and have a drink, that creates memories. And hopefully the bartenders that are taking part in the Jabu are helping create those memories and introducing people to some of the ingredients that the continent has to offer.
I like that, and I think that you touched on something that I think is important for a lot of us to internalize as well. Is there are things like globalization, global spice trade makes
Yep.
us forget that like things that uh not that I like, oh, I'm not walking out in my yard here in St. Louis being like, oh, look at all this or natural ginger just popping up. But like but to some of these things that are already proliferated in cocktails or in food, that where did they come from? And that also part of the job is also reclaiming it and it being put at the center of those things too. And again, a lot of times, even for those of us, native to the US or whatever, there could be plants that we don't understand its origin in terms of just like, oh, like I don't really think about it in terms of like this is used around the world, but it's really from here. So I think that idea of like understanding your history of what plants and things have shaped a place over time too, like you said with paella as well. So
Yep.
yeah.
And it's interesting as well. You just pointed on some ingredients, and it's funny. Gin is a massive part of the spirits collection across the continent, and something I've always noticed. For example, you pointed on ingredients was take for example grains of paradise, which you see in Bombay Sapphire, a gin that's popular all over the world. That grains of paradise comes from West Africa. It comes from villages not too far from where I was born and grew up. And I always feel really proud of that. I remember the first time I saw Bombay Sapphire and I read the ingredients and I was like, oh, grains of paradise. It's a spice that we use for cooking, right? And it's
Hmm.
also known to have medicinal properties. And it's just great that it's being used and celebrated in a spirit. If we take, for example, as well, Inverosh, which is a very local indigenous spirit to South Africa, is a gin made using the um, the fynbos from that Western Cape. And this indigenous ingredients that you find that there, which then offer a whole different flavor profile for people making cocktails. And you have obviously, Amarula, little drop with my coffee in the morning, always works a treat. And I think maybe that may have been around before Bailey's, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
What's the arc of that? Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that you as you travel across the continent, you start to discover the different nuances. For example, coffee is a massive part of cocktail culture right now. Our teams and our partners out of Kenya, they bring some of the most amazing coffees with them to the festival and share it with us. And we try different espresso martinis with different blends of coffee. So there's lots of that kind of sharing of information and ingredients, which I really appreciate at every session of AJABU.
I recently had a chance to talk with a guy who's won some global barista competitions, and he was saying, yeah, he goes, the partnership between chefs and bartenders is a natural extension, but I hope over time, to your point, whether it's the grower or the barista, he's like, baristas often, like bartenders have this like mile wide set of knowledge at times in terms of all these cocktails versus baristas have to go just really deep in terms of understanding the nuances and to understand the various impacts of coffee. And again, so much of it coming from the continent is is definitely important in that regard. So,
Yeah, definitely.
uh, one of the things you also, and you kind of talked about this as well with building a community, but I don't know if there's any talking points you think are important to go deeper on in terms of empowering this generation of bartenders to build this community. Are there the things, and again, you've been quick to say this is not Colin's festival. You're kind of helping bring people together and then from there let the thing do its magic. But in terms of what you see as important for empowering this generation of bartenders, are there things that you guys are focusing on, or you see people wanting to talk about at AJABU that are important to kind of like, again, how do we dignify this as a profession, a thing you can make a career in, as opposed to the thing you do for a year or two in your teens and 20s or whatever, if you will?
That's it's so funny. That's the were you actually at the festival? Because that was one of the topics of conversation. I think it always is when it comes to bartenders, topic of conversation. What we're finding here in the US and across Europe is being viewed as a profession, and we try to ensure that everything we do, we try to we're trying to professionalize the industry as much as we can. We provide a certain amount of scholarships every year, which is really important for us because education is foundational and it's key. Because the more you learn, the better you become, the more inquisitive you are, and the more you learn, the more you can share that knowledge with others. So scholarships are really important to us, and we predominantly give them to 70% women that apply for the scholarships and through WSET, for example, they're the ones that have been really spearheading this movement, and also the Scotch whiskey. Um, institution, they've been providing some scholarships for us. So education is foundational. We have scholarships which are slowly but surely starting to make a change. Now, when it comes to how we ensure that people are viewing hospitality as a profession, we are definitely trying to bring different people in to AJABU from different walks of life. For example, we have Amamensa recently from Rain Rum, she had nothing to do with the alcohol industry. She inherited land from her parents, from her family. It was a cashew farm. On that cashew farm, they also grew sugarcane. She decided to distill this sugarcane, left her job in the city, and really focused on working with her community to create a world-class luxury spirit. So she came from a different walk of life into the industry, which really shows everyone in the industry that you can come from different pathways and still have a space. We also had great conversations around sustainability and ingredient upcycling, things that happen all over the world, but things that also happen on the continent, but people don't necessarily call it sustainability. They just call it surviving, right? And there's certain things that they have to, because if you don't, as Simone mentioned to the group, if you don't have certain things, focus on what you do have and make sure that those things are sustainable. If you don't have the new roto vaps and so on and so forth, it's fine. You can use other techniques and ways to ensure you get the same or similar kinds of outcomes. And
Mhm.
so the big shift was, I think, at AJABU was really everyone's mentality moving more towards the focus on what everyone has and
Sure.
celebrating that.
Got it. Um, One other question on this, and if you have time, wouldn't mind a question or two about your day job. Oh, he has another job, aka Bacardi. But I would like wouldn't but Colin, for some people out there, and I imagine you've navigated this a bit, they hear, hey, come to this cocktail festival in Africa, and the first thing that might come through their mind is a bit of unease. And again, sometimes we just have to go see a thing. But what do you say if people begin to like, hey, is it safe? Like how do you begin to navigate that? Again, like, thanks for dealing with the question, but like I feel like if it's on somebody's mind, how do you kind of respond to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. My partner and I, Mark, we always talk about that. We always talk about the fact of, oh, be careful of going to Africa. You might get eaten by lions. And then they turn up, they're like, oh, this is literally like Cape Town is like South Beach. It's like Hollywood Hills. It's like Sydney. It's like it's just normalized. And something that I always say to people, it's the continent is the same as everywhere else, in the fact that just ensure that you behave in a way that is respectful, behave in a way that you would back home. And if you normalize your behavior, you will be absolutely fine. It's safer than most people think. And I've been traveling around the continent for many years, and I would recommend for everyone to come and see for themselves, because and don't listen to stories, because if that's the case, then you wouldn't travel anywhere through, say, Europe. You wouldn't travel to parts of America. You wouldn't travel through parts of South America. You're told it's dangerous. Whose lens are you looking through?
Right.
And why is it dangerous? And something that we try and do to kind of put um, people's fears to rest is we normalize things. When you come to a job, we get taxis everywhere. You get Ubers everywhere. It's not a, oh, we're sticking you all in a van and there's armed security and no, none of that, you
Right.
know. And we obviously give you some guides and do's and don'ts of, hey, you're not back home and walking around your neighborhood. You do not know this area. When you go to any other neighborhood in anywhere in the world, you definitely are more aware of what's around you. And so you should be, because that's just how we manage to, it's how we navigate our lives, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, to those that come in, book your flight, get in the hotels, and come and see us. We stay at Camps Bay Village in Cape Town, and then in Joburg we always stay at a place called the was it Bath Hotel, and it's they're really nice accommodations, just as good as any you'd get anywhere in the world. And it's funny when Mark, and as I said, bringing it back to what Mark and I always said, he said, a lot of people think when you go to Africa, you're going to get eaten by lions. I've only ever seen one lion in my life on the continent, and I've been many times, and that's because I went on a safari.
Right. Right. No, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem. And the food is sensational, and it rivals the same of as many places in the world. Everywhere has its own little influences. Like obviously in South Africa, it's a lot of braai, which is kind of grilling culture, which we're all very used to. Barbecue culture, grilling culture, we're all very used to that. And obviously, as you move around the continent, there are other influences in cooking as well. And it's the time is now, because the world's getting smaller, and I mean you can have an African influence here at home, but it's better to go and sample it firsthand, I think.
do you have a couple more minutes still? Are we doing okay?
Yes, 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 yeah.
Okay.
I've got more
I
notes.
wouldn't mind real quick if you're okay with it. The work you do on behalf of La Grande Familia is obviously very
Yeah,
important. And so again, like we've all been through this before. And again, the March for Advocacy is a long one, but I wouldn't mind if we could chat about that for a minute.
yeah, of course. Advocacy is a really important part of the spirits and the food industry. It's a space and a place where people come together to celebrate and share each other's ideas. And we are lucky at Bacardi to have a very seasoned team, a group of people that I've been working with for many years. We always have our customer as are at the front of mind of everything that we do, at the center of everything that we do. And we ensure that we try and cater for the trade and the trade's needs as much as is humanly possible. And we try and put the trade first of all of our activities. We listen to a lot of what a lot of the trade want to see and hear happen in the industry, and we try as much as we can to provide them spaces for them to connect. And you see a lot of cocktail festivals and local on the ground activities. And it brings me great joy to see how the team has grown. When it first started, there was just a handful of people. I think the team was under 20. And now it's a lot bigger, and we try, even with all of these economic forces going on, we try to ensure that we try and engage with the community as much as what we can on the ground. It's important.
Yeah, like I mean, to this, you know, moment we maybe find ourselves in right now, Colin, in terms of what you guys are hearing, or again, I feel like it's easy for people, especially in an advocacy space for minorities or disenfranchised groups, for people to feel a little bit deflated right now. How are you guys? What are you hearing, or what are you guys thinking about in terms of, again, we can only control so much in the world at a moment. You know, if we fret about every problem, we're going to be anxious for forever. But how are you guys trying to navigate this moment where things like such certain initiatives feel very much under attack. How are you guys trying to navigate that right now?
Yeah, we try and listen we listen to what our customers um and what the trade and what the trade has to say, and we try and offer solutions as much as we can. It's obviously it's a difficult space for everybody to be in, and as long as we can all stay together as a community, as long as we can all stay as long as we keep hospitality in mind for all of us and keep our spaces for all of us to feel safe and protected in, I think as generations move on, we will grow and keep elevating and changing as a community. And the hospitality community is resilient, and we will keep. And I mean, we will keep changing. And I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and there've been challenges. They're going to be definitely. Uh, these challenges will help shape the way we engage, will help shape the way that we grow the industry moving forward. And yeah, as I said, we have to stay together as a community. And it's important. And I think places and spaces like all of these cocktail festivals as well offer some kind of solace for our community and the hospitality community moving forward.
Yeah, and I think like in general too, just like to your slogan of get involved, I think I try
Get
to look
involved,
at,
Rob.
yeah, get involved, bruv. Sorry. Yes, thank you. Get it right. Get the slogan right. Come on, we got to stay on brand. But I think to that angle, it's like to me, it's I've tried to look around my own community right now, looking for what I can do as opposed to fretting too much about a nation at large, because I feel like it's just otherwise you're just again, I'm gonna wear myself out. And so how do you make the space you're in a more accepting one, tolerant one? I think on all sides of things. How do we I love there's a line out there I love. It's anger is what fear and pain look like when they show themselves in public. And so I think to all ends of things, while we need to make sure we're never chasing people away, when we feel people pushing back on things, is there something they're afraid of? And how do they not feel heard too? So I think like, how do we practice tolerance on all sides while knowing that everybody needs to feel safe and cared for? And so I think those are just, I think is wildly important is how does the left try to listen to what the right is saying and vice versa and all these things again as we I don't need this to descend into a completely political dialogue, but I'm always interested in how do we ensure that we're all listening, to like the deeper undercurrents that are out there right now.
Yeah. Communication is key.
Yep, yep. um Final thing, I was just curious, like again, your buddy, another omnipresent person in the field, Mr. Good old Simon Ford said, what Colin has done better than anyone in this industry is be the connector of people. He has become the embodiment of what he does. Colin is a brand in himself, in and of himself. And, you know, I, I guess I was curious. I've recently started to the good folks over at Spear Bomb in the rum agricole world. I've started doing a little bit of work for them, and as we see the trade rise and people be more interested in things, the beleaguered bartender, bar owner, liquor store rep, they are the liquor store owner. They are just beset by a nonstop parade of people wanting to show them things. Do you have any, as you look at the team you work with, how do you think about that work in terms of being of good service without like overwhelming? Because we all have the things we're interested to move a little bit, but how do you do that in a way where you're not just overwhelming people because everybody is juggling 8,000 things at a time?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of it is around listening to what people need, listen to what people want, and ensuring that you can try and provide a bridge for those needs and wants. And hopefully that what you're doing is the right thing. What you're and what brands you're providing are the right solutions to what their problems are. and the platforms that you're trying to build and the bridges that you're trying to build are the right things. So yeah, this uh in this sea of so much, one has to be very focused on what one is trying to achieve. And I think, as Simon mentioned, what I try to always ensure is that we're all moving together as one, as a community. And AJABU is definitely one of those kind of that kind of platform for me. As I mentioned, we had an amazing session recently. We had people like Steve Olson, Julio Vermejo, Gabe Bichelle, Vance Henderson, Gareth Howes came, and then we connected them with the local trade on the ground through the brands like Campari's brands, Diageo's brands, Bacardi's brands, and we provided a space where the local bartenders could also show their prowess with bars such as Soul Lounge and place Soul Lounge from Ghana and Hero Nairobi. We partnered them up with some local bars like House of Machines. I think you may have heard of them. And it was great to see how they reacted to hearing from people like Leo Robichek from Nomad Bar talking about what's happening in hospitality in the hotel space. They have world-class hotels there. Bascule is a Fairmont hotel bar that creates amazing cocktails and has fantastic hospitality. We have bars like Fable that are doing amazing things. Talking to Strangers, Sin and Tax are some of my favorite. Cause Effect focuses on the local Feinbosch or the local ingredients of South Africa. But then having people coming from Hero Bar in Nairobi sharing their community with everyone really provides us with a space, I think, especially in these turbulent times, for us to be together and to provide community and for us to connect and for us to collaborate and for us to communicate. Communication is key. And through communication, you build better community. And through better community, it helps us also ensure that the public views us as professionals because we can definitely show that what we do is making an impact. But yeah, Ajabu today, Ajabu tomorrow, Ajabu forever. That's what I say. And it means wondrous and amazing and miracle as well. So it all just works in building the spaces that we're trying to.
Yeah, I remember that syntax event in Peychaud's last year, and the guys seemed great. So no,
Yeah,
so
Julian
yeah,
Shorts than ever. Yeah, Julian
that's,
Shorts than ever.
yep.
Julian is amazing, and Ever as well. Both of them world class.
Yeah. No, thanks for getting up early. Is there anything we haven't covered today? But thanks for getting up early. I know you're many, many hours ahead. Like
I
anything we
am.
haven't covered today, but thanks for
Yeah, I did forget that the big one of the biggest drinks and in South Africa is actually brandy and Coke. And there was a guy who came who he was sat outside the venue looking in and he didn't know if to come in or not. I in turn went outside just to ask him who he was and he said, "Oh, I own a bunch of pubs and I don't know if cocktail culture is what we're about and what we deliver to our guests." And I said, well, it's interesting because in this room we have the Brandy Society of South Africa. You guys pour brandy, right? He said, "Yeah, we do brandy and cokes." I'm like, "Well, that's a style of cocktail. It's a highball. So you are in cocktail culture. Come, join the group." And he had the best time. His eyes were opened, and he had one of the best experiences. And it's things like that that really make me happy. That we can show that our industry is inclusive, our industry is resilient, and as long as we can communicate and we can collaborate, we can build community, and it's so important for me. And people can get involved, Rob.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, no, if you haven't missed the message, everybody, it's Colin's expecting you next year or later this year at the next one because we got a
November.
biannual, yeah, in November. But Colin will certainly link out to AJABU Festival, and congrats on kind of getting this thing off the ground. And you've created a monster. You're gonna look back in 10 years and be like, oh my goodness, remember when we were, yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. I love the trajectory. I love the fact that people are embracing it. The local community is embracing it on the ground, and they're taking ownership. They get up and say speeches in the middle of a event, and I look around and I feel pride at that because they're taking ownership. And for me, that's what it's about.
yeah,
You know?
perfect. Well, thanks for taking time early this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Chris. Much appreciated, sir.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love it if you'd write us a review on whatever platform you listen on or share an episode with a friend. The show notes are available at decodingcocktails.com/podcast. Happy cocktailing, everybody.